Next up on the Ultimate Sports Network's New York Knicks station, we speak to die-hard Knicks fans Les Wolff and Geoff Campbell.
Interesting how I became a Knicks fan. I was maybe 11 years old. I played in a park across from Queens College, Promenade Park. It was Project the Queens. And Emmett Bryant and Willis Reed came down to teach us how to play.
No.
So that's how I was introduced to how to play basketball. Emmett Bryant, former Knicks guard, Willis Reed, the Hall of Fame center, taught me how to play basketball. At least they did it in instructional. That gave me the desire to play more. And from there, I became, I'm still trying to become a basketball player. I still play. I started following the Knicks right after that. I'm a memorabilia dealer and a collector. I had to become a dealer to afford my addiction. I met the Knicks. I went to the hotel as a little kid, and Wolff stayed at the New Yorker hotel. And I was a little kid, and I just went upstairs, found out what room number he was in. Back in the day, we were able to find it out. Knocked on his door, and all I heard is the loud music flying the family stone. And he came out. He signed a piece of paper for me then, and that was his history. And then I remember the first time I met Earl Monroe. He was playing us on our Knicks, and it was on Washington back then. And I said, "Earl, I just got to ask you one question. Monroe, tell me how I can practice that shot that you make." He said, "How do you do it?" It's luck, my boy. Luck. Oh yeah.
All right.
I'm a memorabilia collector and a dealer, and I've met every professional athlete in nearly every sport and gotten almost all their autographs. But the main thing is I was able to have a relationship with a lot of them. And DeBusschere was one of my favorites. I loved Clyde. I just loved the 69 Knicks team, 68, 69. And to this day, I'm friends with Johnny Warren, who was a bench player on St. John's, but he's one of St. John's greatest players ever. His son plays basketball at the Y that I'm at. He comes all the way from Astoria to Long Island.
Oh, wow.
He's a good ball player, and there's going to be a Knicks reunion. This is the 50th year of the Knicks winning in 69.
Wow.
Now, many more years we're going to have to wait for the Knicks to win again. My question to you guys.
Well, Geoff, we'll let you get into that, and we'll see if that is possible.
Yeah. So my name is Geoff Campbell. I write a little bit for Lead Sports NY. My day job is as a school psychologist for the New York City Department of Education. I became a Knicks fan, like a lot of people born around the late 80s and 90s, falling in love with the 90s Knicks, the grit and grind, the hewing, the Oakley, Mason. That's kind of how I got my start, but I feel like where I really kind of, became very much, addicted and a fanatic was during the rough years, during the Isaiah years, when we were giving out a lot of, very big contracts that never seemed to end. And we had a lot of losing during that time. So I think, through those years of kind of misery, hoping and praying for a winner at some point, that's really where I kind of, got my roots in as a Knicks fan. So I don't have a very cool story like Les meeting Clyde, but my dad, I know for a fact he loved DeBusschere, all those guys. I think when Phil came back here originally, there was a lot of hope that we would kind of see some of the success that those late 60s and early 70s teams had, because he had a lot of connections to that culture back then. So as for when the Knicks are going to win again, it seems like we're always putting our hopes and dreams into a summer free agent class. So hopefully sooner rather than later. But, with this team, you never know.
Well, and that's where we're at right now, fortunately or unfortunately. And a lot of teams, but as I go from my Cavaliers fandom, where you have people now that are on the bandwagon that have never even been in Cleveland. And then when LeBron leaves again, you're like, now what do I do? I'm a Cavs fan from all the way back to when they were just so awful it wasn't even funny. But you're still a fan because you're a fan of that team and that's who you follow. So I guess my question is, when you start looking at being a Knicks fan, and Geoff, we talked about this before, do you are you concerned about the record, or are you concerned about how they're going about their business? Because I think those are two different things. And as you said, with the Isaiah years and the parts of what are we getting these contracts out for? The Carmelo, we finally got rid of him, but do we need to get rid of him? Do we need to keep him? All those fun things. Are they headed on the right path now? I guess that's my question. Or they at least have a path?
Yeah, I would definitely say that they – I'm sorry, Les. You can go for sure.
I think the big thing with the Knicks is the problem is Dolan, really. He's got daddy's money, but he doesn't know how to spend it right. He continues to hire the wrong people. Hopefully this time he's got the right people, but we're not going to know for another 3 to 5 years. And who knows, we could be further in the hole, with a bad team. I think the key is going to be the draft, first off. And I hope we get Zion, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, I kind of think Barrett may be the better fit, but we never know which way the Knicks are going, because every time that they have the cap space, guys that we really want don't come here. And it's smart they don't come here because our management stinks.
Yeah.
It's not like we have a Greg Popovich as our coach, or somebody that's established as a good coach. We have David Fizdale. I don't know how good he is. I mean, but we're not going to have to wait another 3 to 5 years. We're constantly rebuilding. Unlike a team like the Yankees, they're always rebuilding, but they have a good nucleus. Right now, what's our nucleus? Kevin Knox, and we don't even know what he's going to turn out. And he could be another God forbid, but realistically, he could get hurt like Porzingis did, and we're back to square one again.
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. We're always looking for that one savior, and we're not. Kevin Durant. Hopefully, he does come here, but he's not going to be the end all.
Well,
we need at least 4 good players.
Well,
we have Dennis Smith. He's going to change. Okay, he'll be our point guard. We have Kevin Knox. He'll be one of our forwards. Are we going to get Kevin Durant, and maybe we'll get Zion or R.J. Barrett? I mean, who knows? Maybe we're going in the right direction, but we're not going to know based upon the track history of the Knicks.
Well,
it's not a good one to be in.
And Jeff, this is kind of where when you jumped into the Knicks, you had Ewing, obviously, but you also had 5, 6, 7 guys around him. You had a slew of point guards, ranging from Mark Jackson to Rod Strickland to Derek Harper to Chris Childs. I mean, you had something there. Even Greg Anthony. You had someone there who could run the show. That was, I think, the important thing. And then you had other players around them that could do other things besides just score the ball. And right now, here's, I guess my question to that is, even if you kept Porzingis, what else did you have to build around him?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question. To just go back to something that Les said that I really agree with. I think, one of the criticisms that I actually heard from somebody, who writes for my site, is that one of the biggest problems with the Knicks is that they actually very much, I don't know if perennially they see themselves like this, but they almost see themselves like the Yankees in a sense, in the sense that they are in New York, in a big market, so people are going to want to come here. But as Les correctly pointed out, it just hasn't happened for a lot of different reasons, and management is certainly one of them. I do believe that they have a plan in place. When Scott Perry came here, Mills hired him. One thing they consistently said was that they're not trading draft picks. So far, they've kept their word. Over the next 5 years, I think we have, 7 first-round picks. So we're looking good in that area, right? But it is always about which way is a cookie going to crumble. Are we going to remain patient? That's the biggest thing. We have a plan, right? But let's say Kevin Durant and Kyrie don't come here. Now, are we going to overpay your tier 2 free agents, your Tobias Harris, your Kemba Walker, Chris Middleton? Are you going to give them max dollars in the hopes that they turn around and, what does a team with them and our rookies look like? Is that a top 5 team in the East? Who knows? Is that what you want your ceiling to be? Because if you do pay them, you're committed to them long term. So my hope would actually be, and I just don't know if the media and the fans in New York would let it happen, And hopefully this front office is strong enough to really kind of stay the course. If we strike out, let's continue to build the young guys. Let's continue to go through the draft, build things organically. And when we have a culture ready, like Les is talking about with the Yankees, or when we have an established coach that we hope Fizdale becomes like a Popovich, then we will have built the culture that people really want to come and play with. Because you see Brooklyn, you see Philadelphia, you see some of these other teams, they took their lumps. You know, they went through some losing seasons. They have their draft picks. They really invested in their player development programs. They stuck by young coaches like Brett Brown, Kenny Atkinson, and you see the fruits of the labor now. The question is, and it's always with New York, are we going to be patient enough to do that?
And, you know, that's the thing that I'm looking at now. You can see the gray, so you know that I'm not 12 years old anymore, that I don't know that, and this is a larger picture, a larger question than just the Knicks. I don't know that there are that many players out there that you can get through the draft at 22 years old, or some of them are even as young as 19 as Luka Doncic is, that you're going to say, this is who we build around. And that's the problem right now, is I don't know that the guys are coming out of college right now that used to come out of college, where there might be 5, 6, 7 guys in a draft that 5 or 6, 7 teams could say, we've got a guy. We've got a guy this year. We get another guy next year. We're okay. As you mentioned, the Sixers. You get Ben Simmons in one draft. You get Joel Embiid in another draft. You get, Nerlens Noel, who you can move in another draft. Markelle Fultz, you can, people that people want that you can move to other teams. Was it Jabari? Not Jabari Parker. Yeah, right. Okay. They may not be fitting in here, but they're at least good enough to fit in someplace else, or at least someone will take a chance on them. I don't know that you can get that many people in one draft anymore, or in several drafts where it works that way. Now, that's just Jeff, we talked about this before, of my research that I've done in lottery picks and how much they actually pan out. That's another story entirely. But obviously you have young players. I get that. But you have to have young players with a certain character. They're going to say, we're going to take this team and we're going to mold it, and we're going to be molded into one franchise where we're going to do positive things. And again, you say, well, is it Kevin Knox? It might be. But who are the other guys with all these picks you're going to get? And you've got to be have a little more discretionary thought of, we're not just drafting talent, we're drafting the guys that are going to make it work. So, and unless I go back to where you came in, it's like, okay, we had a solid nucleus of Clyde Frazier, Willis Reed. Then we build around that. We bring in DeBusschere, we bring in Bradley, we bring in Jerry Lucas, we bring in Earl of Pearl Monroe, we bring in these guys. When you do that, you have a chance. And I think that that's what they're trying to do. But can they do that in today's environment where we got to do it right now? Everyone's thinking social media, we've got to do it right now. Les, is there a patience factor for Knicks fans, you think?
I think we're more on the impatient side. But
right.
Another thing I think it just made me think of, that we don't seem to be doing that Mark Cuban seems to be very good at, and a lot of other owners, our scouting system. We don't find the raw player. Now we have Mitch Robinson, he's a possibility. But we're not finding we don't know the definitive player we want to draft. Like, you knew that Dallas wanted Luka Doncic.
Right.
You knew that they traded up to him. You knew that they wanted him. The year before, they wanted Ntilikina. So we have to work on the development of our players. I think that's our biggest thing. The minor leagues now, which is Westchester, we keep on signing these kids from a 10-day contract for the rest of the season. But we're not all on the same page, in my opinion, right now. I think the owner, along with the general manager, the president, and the coach, all have to be on the same page. And Dolan knows how to throw around a lot of money and waste it. Instead of, if you look at the Yankees, the way they built the team in the 90s, Steinbrenner got canned because he got suspended. Gene Michael was the general manager. He had freedom of taking care of the minor leagues. So what they did, they signed Pettit. They didn't trade him. They could have traded Mariano for a shortstop from Seattle. You kept Jeter. You had Bernie. You had the nucleus there.
Posada, right.
Right now, again, with signing Severino, signing Hicks, Yankees have the same formula. The Knicks don't seem to have a formula. It's like you're cheap. And from what I can see right now, I don't see it changing.
And that's
what do you guys?
Well, and see that's the point I'm trying to make. It doesn't seem like it seems like a never-ending cycle. That okay, well, and Jeff, just what you said, if it's a 3 or 5 year process, we get into about year 15 month and go, oh well, scrap it and try again.
Yeah.
And even though you can't tell until you get into that 3 or 5 year process, you can tell in year, in the 15th month, you're going, no, this ain't working. Well, okay, great. But how will you know if you don't try it? You're already losing. You might as well keep losing and try. But do they have that plan in place? I guess it's an odd conundrum. Like, why would you keep going down that path? But you've got to keep going down that path to find out what's going on.
It's true. I would say that at least this time.
Nothing against Tisdale, but I was kind of hoping that they would get an established coach that's got a track record, not just try to sign Phil Jackson to hope to coach and become a general manager. But he actually had a good point. He wanted to trade Porzingis and try to draft Markkanen. So maybe there was some validity to some of Jackson's moves. But we keep on getting new regimes.
Right.
I mean, we're never going to know because we're going to have to keep on waiting and waiting and waiting. But the biggest problem is that Madison Square Garden sells out all the time. Dolan doesn't care whether or not they win or lose. But they're sold out all the time. And that's a major problem. Maybe if the fans boycotted the team until we signed Durant, until we signed Kyrie Irving, until we got Zion, and we had a foundation of 5 players, not just 2 or 3 players. And remember, we had Amari. Amari brought his we overtraded for Carmelo. The Pacers general manager didn't want to give up all that stuff when we had him. And he was right. We gave up way too much to get Carmelo, and then we got a one-dimensional player, one of the best ball-to-good scorers of all time. How much defense did he ever play? I mean, can we win with him? No.
Right.
Then we get back to Jeff's era. We had Patrick. We never had another supporting player for him that was good enough.
Right.
So we kind of fall into, history keeps on repeating, but falling in the same formula, going back and forth and on and on and on. And Dolan doesn't seem to care. So if these rumors that Dolan wants to sell, let him sell. So we need new ownership. Look at the Islanders. The Islanders changed their they bought Wanks have finally sold. 2 guys are partners now. They brought in the Stanley Cup winner Klotz from Washington. They brought in Lou Lamoriello, an established winning formula, winning coach, and Stanley Cup winner, winning general manager, Hall of Famer, general manager, and he did it. He did it with the Islanders. He did it with Toronto. He built Toronto. Now he's working on the Islanders. So we need that kind of foundation. What did Tisdale do? He worked for Pat Riley. How many titles did he win? What did Mills do? Mills worked for the Knicks before. He hasn't done anything.
Well, that's the thing, Jeff. The question I have there, and just what you're saying, on Les's point, that's all fine and good, but how do you get that person to go to the Knicks?
Yeah, you're talking in terms of an established person.
As we're establishing the regime, just what you said, we're in year 3 of a process, or year 1 or year 5. How do we get to that point? Because we brought in Phil Jackson. That should have been it,
right?
And that didn't do it. So if you can't do it with Phil Jackson, not to say Phil Jackson end all be all, but if you can't do it with Phil Jackson, who do you get?
I think it's so interesting. Like I was just thinking of what Les said about with Phil when he had tried to trade Porzingis. Really vilified for that at the time, and it's so funny how things come around full circle. I'll to be honest, I wasn't the hugest Phil guy. I was an executive.
Right.
I thought there were things he did here and there in terms of his kind of building relationships with the players that I know may have worked really well for him, when he was winning titles with the Bulls and the Lakers, maybe not so much in today's NBA. But it's interesting because, who knows if he had traded Porzingis at the time. And I think one of the names that were floated around was Devin Booker, who was in the league, and I do know that he was interested in Lauri Markkanen as well. So it's interesting how that could have worked out had it actually happened. But in terms of getting someone established to come here, I mean, it's tough because, you know, history says it's not going to work. I think that we have a good plan in place, and I just think we have to kind of look at ourselves not so much as a big market New York conglomerate, but just as a budding basketball franchise that really needs to work from the ground up. You know, we have young players that are still learning scheme, you know what I mean,
Right.
technique. Defensively, we have 19 and 20-year-olds on this team that are playing Fortnite, you know what I mean, till like 2 a.m. And we really need to work with that. And I know it sounds very pie in the sky, but I think if we really truly look at this as a 3 to 5 year process, and understand that Fizdale is a part of that process too, meaning that he is also a developing coach. He's also someone who's still figuring out of timeout situations, how to work with his coaching staff the best way, how to work with his players in the best way. The biggest reason that I see that we brought Fizdale here, and it is something that I've seen as a major positive from him, is just his relationships, his ability to communicate and have relationships with his players. And I know that's been a very big buzzword this year that a lot of people throw out there. Player development. He's all about player development this, player development that. He came from the Heat culture. But I will say that with the exception of very few players and really only Enes Kanter, in a year where we've had basically 13 wins and just a lot of losing, you have not seen a mutiny from this young team. You have not seen guys that are in 1-year contracts also basically go out there and say, I'm getting mine, you know, forget this player development for the Knicks because I need to get my next contract. So I do think that's a big positive for him. And obviously as this team gets better, the microscope will be a lot, you know, the hot seat, I would say, would be a lot bigger for Fizdale to really see what he's made of in terms of, you know, can he build a cohesive offense? You know, this year has been very, very simple, high pick and roll, dribble handoffs, things like that. You know, it's you know, he's not, you know, you see a little bit of off ball screening here and there, but it's not a lot. And what he said is that he wants to keep a very simple offense for the young guys to get acclimated to before, you know, they start putting in a lot of intricate stuff. Defense hasn't looked good either. So, you know, we're going to see it. I guess it's somewhat of a cop-out answer to say that it's going to take time, but it is going to take time. And in terms of getting someone established here, I don't know. My gut feeling tells me that it's not going to happen this summer, but I just hope if it doesn't, because basically if you're Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, you are really coming to New York for the bright lights. You know, if you want to play better basketball, you could go to Brooklyn. The Nets are a better team. They're going to have cap space. You know what I mean? There's other teams than us that have cap space, maybe not room for 2 max contracts. And that's what's going to be the draw for New York. The fact that you can get these free agents to talk to each other and say, hey, let's team up and play here. But if you're coming to New York, you're coming because you basically, if you win here, you're a god. And it really cements your NBA legacy, maybe, you know, as one of the best all time, whatever you want to say, right? So that's really the reason you're coming, because if it's just about basketball and money, there are other places that have more established culture and at least habit of winning than we do in the last 20 years. So we'll see. Well,
you mentioned a couple things here that I think are interesting. And this goes back again to a previous conversation that we had and a conversation that I've run through several different times. You've got 19 and 20-year-olds playing Fortnite, you know, and coming in with, you know, wrist ailments because they were on their computer and on their Game Boy all the, you know. Oh my God. It's the idea of how do we learn how to play in the NBA? It's different than just showing up. And when you have a Kevin Knox who played 1 year in college, you have Mitch Robinson who played no years in college, you have kids that are just showing up and learning how to play, who's their mentor? It's not just how do you play, it's how do you spend your per diem? How do you get to the ballpark? What do you do with your off time? There's a lot more that goes into becoming a professional athlete than just saying I have the talent to play. And that's why I think they need to spend some of that money on maybe remember back in the day when you bring in a Herb Williams or a Sam Mitchell or an Antonio Davis or someone like that who would be, okay, I know how to play the game other than playing the game. I may not be the best player anymore, like a David West going to the Warriors. That was an important move for them because he allowed them to be able to learn how to play from him. He may not have been, or Andre Iguodala, for example, with the Warriors, may not be the star anymore. But
Finals MVP.
Exactly, but you have someone you can build around and someone you can ask questions from. Who does Kevin Knox ask a question of? I don't know what to do with my money. I don't know what to do with my time. I don't know what to do with publicity or this or that. PR. I just in casual conversation, those things are very important. And then the second part of that, I think, is that executive-wise, no one knew who, you mentioned Popovich. No one knew who Popovich was really until he got to San Antonio and started building that culture. You can make that when Pat Riley came out of the booth and went to the Lakers. No one knew that Pat Riley was going to be able to do that other than the people that hired him, Jerry West. So I'm not going to say no one because Jerry West is not a no one. But you see where I'm going with that. It's if Fizdale is the guy or Scott Perry is the guy, leave him alone. And as Les has said, Larry Dolan, you've got your money. You're making money because Madison Square Garden's going to fill out every day no matter what. If this is the guy, leave him alone, get creative, and make some moves, whether it be for a max player or whether it be for that solid person. But I think that they're working too far on both ends here. We're going to try and bring in Carmelo or Amari Stoudemire or the big name player, and we're going to try and draft the next superstar of the draft. Maybe get some guys that are solid citizens, that are solid NBA citizens, bring them in. I'm not saying you have to have 15 of them, but 3 or 4 wouldn't be bad, and then they can learn how to play from them. I think in my way of looking at it, that's what they're missing. Because I think what some teams do is say, we have the superstar now, we'll fill in around them. Well, maybe you have the guys that are the solid players and you fill in around them. So that's my take on it. Les, your experience has been looking at, you get the autographs from the stars, but they're stars because they know how to get the job done. So you understand where these guys are coming from and what they've done, the history of how do we play the game. And I'm going to go a little off script here. When you've talked to some of these guys, do you get that sense of gravity of, I know what I'm doing because I'm an NBA player, or is it I'm a superstar because I played 1 year at Kentucky or at UMass or something?
I think the one thing as both of you are talking, the one thing I keep on not hearing, and I don't see with the Knicks, is one word. Red Holtzman used to teach it. It's old school John Wooden discipline. I don't see the discipline on it. And you don't see it that much in the NBA at all anymore because everybody's just run and done.
Right.
And I can play run and done all day. But once you become a team and you set pick and rolls and you work, you have plays, then you become a real team and then you can win. If you're going to constantly have run and done, everybody trying to hit the final three-pointer to win the game, maybe Dwayne Wade hit that great shot last night. He hadn't been that, 10 years?
Right.
But at least had a plan there. The Knicks don't seem to have that plan. But every year they'll say every 2 years they have a new manager, a new coach, general manager. The question, we keep on waiting and waiting and waiting, but we need that discipline. Maybe we need a college coach that just had a couple of good years of coaching, or a coach that coached. Or maybe it is David Fizdale that he got the right opportunity with the right players. I don't know. We don't know, and that's the problem. We have too many question marks with a team that has an opportunity now to really make a difference with all these number one picks. Now you look at the Nets, Jeff. You pointed out the Nets. My son works at Barclays. I went to one game there and I watched them. We watched them a lot on TV. They're a much more exciting team to watch. And growing up as a Knicks fan, I always hate the Celtics. I got to tell you, last year I watched the Celtics. I enjoyed the way they played. Brad Stevens was a great coach in college, and he's transferred that to the pros. But we need to find that right coach. And then that's the problem. I mean, the Yankees went ahead, they signed a broadcaster. Now, I don't know how good he's going to be. I personally would have kept Girardi. I love Girardi. But they're trying something different. The Knicks are going for retreads. Why not try to find the one guy, recruit a guy the same way for the team as a player and as a coach?
And
try to find the guy that fits the system or has the system that he can put in place. And the main thing got to be teamwork and discipline. With discipline and teamwork, those two things have to work hand in hand.
And Jeff, I think that goes to your point of, if it is Fizdale, for example, let's ride with him. If it's not, if it's Scott Perry, let's ride with him. But if it's not, we need to find that guy and find out what they've got up here. What are we going to do? And as you said, I don't know that they have a plan. And maybe they do, but what is that plan? And you see it all over the place. The Cleveland Browns, for example, just floundering for decades. But everyone had a plan when they came in. But it goes back, I believe, to what Les said about the owner. Now, I'm not one to shovel dirt on an owner. I've only done that with one owner, and in Cleveland I went through some wowzers. I didn't rail on Ted Stepien. Trust me, it would have been easy, but I didn't do that. I was a little kid then, but I'm like, everyone else is yelling at Ted Stepien. Maybe I should too. The only owner I've ever railed on was Donald Sterling, and my line was, Donald Sterling should not be able to own a hamster, let alone an NBA basketball franchise. But it wasn't because of what happened later. It was because of some of the completely ridiculous moves that were being made. Now, I'll rail on an owner's moves or their motivation, but the person I'll stay out of. Donald Sterling just did some things. You went, what is he thinking? And he continues to do that. See, I don't know. The Larry Dolan thing, I don't know. I don't know that it's him, or, as you said, they're still selling on MSG every night, so what's he care? And I mean, I don't know if – it's hard for me to imagine that that's his motivation, but as a businessman, if you're turning a profit, maybe that's it. So is it – I don't know if a new ownership is the answer, but it's got to be – well, I think Les, you hit it perfectly on the head. George Steinbrenner meddled and meddled and meddled and meddled. And then when he got suspended, G. Michael came in and said, you know what? George isn't here. Let's fix this. And then when George came back, he realized, I think they got it right without me. Maybe Larry Dolan just needs to step out of the way, if that's what the problem is, put the right person in place and step out of the way and say, now run. And maybe it is this group. I don't know. But it seems to me that, and just what Les said, you're missing those two very good components, that teamwork and that discipline, that sense of, we are going to do it. I was watching the thing on, I think it was 30 for 30, if I'm not mistaken, on Reggie Miller, that 8 seconds of whatever you want to call it. But what I took out of it was that Knicks squad, because you're looking at the guys that were on the Knicks at that particular time, and you're looking at the way things were orchestrated. You had Pat Riley, you had Van Gundy on the bench with him, you had Patrick, you had Greg Anthony, you had all these players. Now, I was never a huge John Starks fan, but that's me. But you had these players, and there was something about that mindset of, we are professional basketball players, and we're going to get the job done. A few seconds here and there in a few different seasons, it's a whole different story for that part of the franchise. But they were close. And I think it was because you had solid men playing the game. And I don't know that you have that because they haven't had the opportunity to grow up yet. And I'm not an advocate of bringing in a whole new crew of old guys either, but, it's a fine line. And, Jeff, you see it. What are we close to that fine line?
Yeah, I would not say that we're close, but I will say that I do think there's reason to be optimistic. So I was looking up before jumping on the pod. Apparently, since the Porzingis trade, we're 10th in the league in defensive rating, which is great because basically our league standing is 27th overall. So, defense has been a pretty rough stretch regardless of what point in the year you want to talk about. But it seems like since the trade, a lot of people will say that is getting rid of Tim Hardaway Jr., who is a pretty big liability on defense. I always had a soft spot for Timmy myself because I did see him kind of grow up in the league from when we first drafted him to now.
Right.
But it does seem like it, and that jump is not in any way a coincidence when you start giving Mitchell Robinson more minutes. When we talk about being there close to that fine line in terms of players that are held accountable, more disciplined, we actually do have some vets on the team that have been helping out. So at least from what I'm hearing anyway, DeAndre Jordan has been a really big presence for Mitchell Robinson. Apparently, since he's come here, his fouls have gone down. He's better at the line now. He's improving his percentage. So absolutely, I hear all of your guys' points in terms of we need to improve the discipline and the teamwork with this team. But this team at this point is so young that I think that we are really just at this point getting them to develop as men on and off the court. Obviously, being a professional athlete for the first time in their year, especially for somebody like Mitchell Robinson, he didn't play organized basketball last year. So that's another thing, to kind of throw in this as well. We're not close. We are not close. And obviously now if we hit it in free agency, then everything speeds up. And then these guys have to grow up really quick, or it becomes a situation in Boston or LA where you now have stars that are upset with kids that can't grow up fast enough, and you want them to be traded for another piece because your window of opportunity is small. So the biggest thing is we have a lot of questions for this team going up, and that's what's most uncomfortable for Knicks fans, because that's basically the place we've been in for the last 20 years. We had one nice 53-win season with Carmelo, division title, and a first-round win against the Celtics. Since then it's just been like a hodgepodge of, are we rebuilding? Are we trying to go for it? But I do see that we have a plan right now. I do see that we have some nice pieces right now. And we have a young coach that is very enthusiastic. He's got a great personality. He's magnetic. But we just really have to wait and see with all of this. We are definitely not close, but I'm encouraged by some of the things that I see on a nightly basis with the team.
Well, you made me think of something, and Les, maybe you can touch on this a little bit for me as well. Does it seem, let me see if I have this right. At one point, and I don't know whether this is a generational, millennial, whatever, I don't know, but it seems as if you have a group of players, not just with the Knicks, but in general, who view being in the NBA as a conclusion to what they assumed was going to happen back when they were playing AAU or whatever, as opposed to it being a privilege to be an NBA player. And again, this may be an age thing, I don't know, but it seems to me that you have, and again, not just the Knicks, but you have guys that, as you said, DeAndre Jordan comes in and Mitch Robinson improves because now he understands the discipline and what it takes to be an NBA player a little bit more, because he didn't play organized ball, but he figured he's going to be in the NBA at one point. Les, do you see that in this generation of Knicks players and in players in general, that as you've come across players in the past, that it's like they'll talk about, I was proud to be an NBA player and I was pleased. I never thought I'd get there because it was tougher to get there now than it seems to be then. It seems like, hey, I'm in the NBA because I'm supposed to be, but it's still not the end-all be-all of, now I want to do shoe commercials and now I want to do this and I want to be in Space Jam, and, it's a business now. I don't know. Just you see where the question I'm trying to ask, I just can't figure out how to ask it.
I think what you're trying to ask is the way I see it now and the way I look at it. Everybody's a first-round pick just about today. If you look at last year's team,
Thank you. Yes.
The lottery held on other teams. And you had a guy like Trey Burke who really came on because you realized he had one of his last chances.
Right.
I first liked him a lot, and I was hoping that we would keep him. I didn't think we could get rid of him also. He He wasn't costing us much money. We should have kept it. I think what the problem is we as fans watching these kids on March Madness, we're watching a little bit of college games, and we think Zion is the end all. But he's a big guy. He doesn't have much of an outside shot. He's very athletic. Is he going to be the end all? We don't know, because in sports we all know that you're one injury away from being a nobody. You got to really work hard. And I don't. These young kids just come in and they take it for granted. I mean, it's like, you think about it. These kids are growing up all over the world now, and when they come to the United States to play basketball in the NBA, it's like winning the lottery, basically, because they know they're going to get a big contract. They get an agent, like Bryce Harper signed for stupid money today, but because the Yankees didn't want him, the Dodgers didn't offer him enough money for the deal that he wanted, and whatever he exactly wanted. We don't know the whole specifics, but these guys, they take it for granted. They think, okay, I'm a first-round pick. I'll make on the top 5. I'll make X amount of dollars, X amount of $1 million. I get a couple of endorsements, but a lot of them could be like the next Frederick Weiss. Remember we got him?
Right.
We thought he was the end all. He didn't even play in the NBA. It's a whole different mentality than years ago, where you had to find the guys. You had 10, 11 round picks that were making the team. Like I'm a Ranger fan also. We just traded Matt Zuccarello. Now, Matt Zuccarello was a fan favorite, but the reason why he was a fan favorite is because he came from nowhere. He wasn't an undrafted. Well, you can't even go back to John Starks. John Starks used to package, helping women with their packages in the supermarket. There's a guy that learned from the bottom up that he had to work hard to do what he to become something. You got these kids now, a lot of them take it for granted. I mean, look at Doncic. What was he playing? 15 years old and playing against 19, 20-year-olds and excelling. How many American players that play in all the colleges here were playing at 15 years old against 19, 20-year-olds?
Right.
They were playing ball, but how many were developed that early? It's a whole different mentality. You look at the Greek Freak. It's another example. The first season, my younger son, when I was watching the games, I'm saying, Garrett, this kid's going to be really good. How many times watch him? And he works so hard.
Right.
You don't see that mentality with a lot of guys, and especially in the NBA.
Well, and that's
not even just the NBA. It's all sports now.
right.
They think there's a payday. What is it? 1% major leagues make it to the pro sports. 1%.
Well, and that's kind of the point that I was making is that, and I think you made it better than I did, that, when the draft was 5 rounds or 6 rounds or whatever, you could still make the team as a drafted player, but you didn't think you had it made. And you mentioned John Starks or a Chris Childs or someone who came off the street, basically. Yes, that was important to them. I'm in the NBA because I earned it. Well, you get somebody, and Trey Burke is a good example, a high round pick, a high lottery pick that has been in the league for a little while, and he doesn't have to be, and I'm not railing on him. I think he's a nice person, actually, but he doesn't have to perform anymore. I got traded again. Okay, I'm still under contract. And I'm not saying it's all about the money, but there's something to be said for that. You mentioned the Bryce Harper deal, but there's something to be said for, I made my money, and I made money for the next 4 generations of my family. I'm going to enjoy that. If in anybody's profession, if they said, now, this year or next week, we're going to give you a 600% raise. How motivated are you to keep doing the best job you can, especially if it's a hard job? I mean, let's be honest with most people. I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to take care of my kids, and I'm going to enjoy it. Why else did I make the money? Jeff, I know that you're sitting there going, yeah, but what you got a yeah, but in there.
Well, it's both. I will say this. I forget who the person was with, but I do remember a kind of really informal conversation with somebody who was part of an organization. I forget what kind of area they worked in, but it was the NBA. And they had basically been telling me, and I think they were maybe like in the training room or something like that. And they did say that, you know, one of the things that was kind of astounding was that, you know, a lot of the professional athletes, you would think, you know, when they have access to basically the best healthcare available, you know, in some of these training facilities, or, you know, the state of the art, you know, whether it's like cryotherapy or, you know, whether it's cold tubs or anything like that, like, you know, you'd be surprised how many athletes don't, you know, take advantage of it, you know, don't come in every day for practice and take care of their bodies. Don't do this, don't do that. But, you know, at the same time, I do think that, you know, that is that what Les is talking about in terms of finding those players that do have that motivation and do have that work ethic. That's really, I think, where your scouting department earns its money. You know, when you are going out to the scouting combine and you're reaching out to these colleges, or whether it's high schools or whatever, and having interviews with the families, you have to be, you know, you know, you have to be able to read
private
people.
eye.
And yeah, in any walk of life, right? And you have to, because any college for the most part is going to speak pretty glowingly about the players, because obviously they want you to draft them. But it really is, you know, incumbent on yourself to kind of, you know, look at this person and see how did they develop. You know, were they a freshman and they came in and they got spot minutes, and then they slowly went up the ladder, 15, 20 minutes a game, 30 minutes a game. Did they work on their game? Did they come back after the summers and the off season with new skills? And where are they? Do they watch tape? You know, how often are they in the film room? And are they asking the coach questions? Do they listen to scouting reports? Things like that. Like, to me, that would be, you know, almost as important, if not more important than, you know, what your vertical is, what your standing reach is, things like that. But one thing I do want to say in terms of the young generation, and I will agree that, you know, I do get the sense, and I do see that a lot of young athletes, at least at the very, you know, at least seem entitled when they come into the league. But I also think we have to consider that, you know, AAU and just exposure in general has really changed the game. You know, these players that come into the NBA are not shocked to have a camera in their face anymore. They're not shocked to be on TV because they've been on TV since they were 15, 16 years. You know what I mean? Like, if you're playing in the McDonald's All-American game, you know, ESPN broadcasts some of the top high school games in the country. So these kids, Alonzo Trier, who's on the Knicks now, he did a commercial with Carmelo Anthony when he was 13 or 12 years old. It was a Gatorade commercial. It was for some sports drink or something like that. Like, this kid has been bred to be in the NBA, like his whole life. I think I read a story about his mom, you know, moving from different places in Mexico to Florida. Like, this was it for him. This was the plan. So I think for a lot of the kids that are growing up today, it's me. I'm sure that they are absolutely thankful to be in the league, thankful to be in the NBA, but maybe in some ways they're almost a little bit more polished enough to not be afraid of the limelight, and ready to kind of step up and say, you know what, I deserve to be here because I have the skills. I've been honing these skills since I was a teenager, and now I'm ready to show the world what I can do. So it's a double-edged sword. I absolutely see, you know, where, you know, athletes are entitled, and, you know, they get their big contract and then they're not coming to off-season workouts and they're not working on their game. You know, I totally see that. And I think that becomes very obvious when you see players who come back from the off-season, they're overweight, you know, they look sluggish. It looks like they didn't do much over the summer. But, you know, I will say one thing about the Knicks scouting department. One thing that I was very encouraged about, when they said they were scouting Kevin Knox, they really liked the idea that he came from such a big university like Kentucky. You know, a university that basically has similar media coverage to the Knicks. You know, has people covering their practices, their games. So stepping onto the Garden, although I'm sure it was an amazing experience, and I'm sure Knox was nervous, you know, he comes from a program that is high stakes. He comes from a program that is very pressured. His father was a professional athlete, or at least he played in Florida State. I'm not sure about professional athlete, but, you know, so these things start to lead you to believe that, you know, Knox comes from good pedigree, and maybe in time himself, you know, maybe he will get there as well.
Well, guys, I'm looking at the clock on the wall, and I'm saying, okay, we've mined today. So I think we did a good job. I appreciate you being here. There's obviously so much more we can talk about. It's kind of scary how many things we can get involved in here, in and out of the Knicks and other stuff in general. Les and I have talked about any number of possibilities of what we can do, and Jeff, I can see that as well. So I'm going to end it here, just so we can – Les and I have something we probably want to talk about with you after we're off the air here. But it's been great. I can see that there's something that the Knicks have to offer. I'm just not sure that they're there yet. But I think as we keep mining this, I think we'll find out whether we get there or not. So thank you once again, and we'll get back to you on this subject again pretty soon.